Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's talk on Secret Judaism in the Sistine Chapel by Dr. Menashe Tahan. Many of you will have been to Rome and visited the fifth most visited art museum in the world at the Vatican, the Sistine Chapel, but you were probably unaware that you were gazing upon secret messages embedded by Michelangelo in his artistic masterpiece. You would certainly be surprised to learn that in the Pope's own chapel, Michelangelo employed these secret messages to advocate for a revolutionary change in Christianity's relationship to Judaism, and that the code itself was rooted in the Jewish tradition. Dr. Menashe Tahan is a scientist. His subject is organic chemistry and polymers for biomedical applications. He paints as well, and his favorite hobby is the history of art. For the last few years, he took a keen interest in the Sistine Chapel's frescoes so that he may present before a Jewish audience the latest authentic interpretations of these works of art, which unmask most stunning revelations. Please welcome Dr. Tahan.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Ladies and gentlemen, the story that I shall be recounting to you today is a truly wondrous one. Why? Because it resembles a biblical tale. It is rather like the story of Purim, in which a powerful character plots to harm the Jewish people, but ends up harming himself. It is also akin to that of Daniel, in which the writing was on the wall, in our case, on the ceiling. But no one other than Daniel himself could decipher it. In our account, numerous scholars, artists, art historians, and clergymen were unable to successfully decode the subject matter over the last 500 years. That's until two modern days Daniels appeared on the scene and revealed to the world the ceiling's startling contents. These Daniels go by the names of Rabbi Benjamin Blech, a professor of Talmud at the Yeshiva University, New York, and Roy Doliner, an art historian and specialist in the Renaissance in Rome. Only through their collaboration were they able to solve the ceiling's riddles, uncovering secrets of an enormous scale, as we shall see very soon. The story begins in the 15th century. By that time, the Jewish people had undergone significant devastation. During the three Crusades, Jews were massacred in Europe and in the Holy Land. They then suffered pogroms in more than 200 blood libels, 200 certificated blood libels. This was followed by a series of expulsions from the major European countries, the last being from Spain, in which one of the most prosperous and cultured Jewish population of the era was utterly ravaged. The Spanish Inquisition burned our sacred books in the streets, in particular the Talmud. It imprisoned, brutally tortured, then publicly torched any secret Jews before expelling the entire remaining community. The Inquisition had been authorized by the Pope Sixtus IV at the request of the Spanish monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella. Who is Pope Sixtus IV? Pope Sixtus IV was born Francesco della Rovere into a humble family. He studied theology and became a renowned theologian and university lecturer. Della Rovere was elected pope due to his pious reputation in the hope that he would eliminate for good the corruption then rife in the Catholic Church. However, he proved to be one of the worst pontiffs. Sixtus IV turned the Catholic Church into a family business, showered titles, estates, and privileges on his relatives, above all, his nephews, whom he made obscenely rich by ordaining them as cardinals, including a boy of 16. He was utterly ruthless and unscrupulous in the means he employed to attain astronomical wealth and absolute power for his relations. This attitude gave birth to the term nepotism, as nepote means nephew in Italian. As regards Judaism and the Jewish people, Pope Sixtus IV devised the theological concept of successionism, which teaches that a given faith can replace a previous one which has ceased to function, just as a new king would take the place of a dead sovereign. He held that the pagan philosophies were succeeded by Judaism, but that this in turn was superseded by the Catholic religion, thus rendering all other faiths invalid. Proponents also believed that because the Jews had killed Jesus and rejected his teachings, they had been punished, losing their capital, Jerusalem, their holy temple, and their homeland. They were damned to be downtrodden and to wander the earth forever, a divine warning to anyone who might refuse to obey the rule of the Church. Consequently, Pope Sixtus decided to rebuild Rome as a New Jerusalem, constructing the Sistine Chapel named after him, 16 for Sixtus, to replace the Jewish Holy Temple of Jerusalem. He designed it according to the Bible, the book Kings 1, chapter 6, thus that its dimensions exactly mirror those of the Temple of Solomon. The chapel was erected as a symbol of the triumph of the Church over Judaism, whose soul was deemed to have vanished off the face of the earth. However, Providence would have it otherwise, and engineered that the most sacred shrine of Christianity be secretly permeated with Jews and Judaism by the hand of one of the greatest artists of all time, Michelangelo Buonarroti. And so it happened that sometimes after the death of Sixtus IV, one of his nephews, Giuliano della Rovere, became Pope Julius II. The new Pope wished to decorate the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel with depictions of Jesus and the Christian saints. He insisted that Michelangelo be engaged on the assignment, although the artist initially refused, considering himself merely a sculptor and not a painter. The pontiff's persistence left Michelangelo little choice, but Julius was clearly oblivious to the type of character he was dealing with. The artist was a free thinker, a lifelong seeker of the truth, a man of rock-solid emotional tenacity, who would not tolerate injustice and would often stand up for the underdog. He was a devoted Christian who studied Judaism and held it in high regard. He could not bear the Vatican's corruption and was enraged by the brutality of the Church toward the Jewish people, who had given him his prophet and the apostles. Michelangelo decided, therefore, that he would use his commission as an opportunity to secretly glorify Jews and Judaism, whatever the cost, as we shall now see. First, I will show you how the Jews were portrayed in the Middle Ages before Michelangelo. It was according to the teaching of the church. The church dehumanized the Jews. The Jews are not really people, human beings. They are a kind of satanic people, bloodthirsty, summarily scorned by God, summarily cursed, summarily damned by God, and therefore they will rot in hell. And then the artist, because the church was the patron of the artists, they have to follow the teaching of the church and describe the Jews in this fashion. You see, they are a kind of satanic people. See how they look? See the nose, the noses, the shape. More. There's not a human being. Well, they are bloodthirsty. They are just sucking the blood of a Christian boy in order to put the blood in the matzah, of course. And this is why they are damned. They're going to hell. Here is the devils are incinerating them in the fire of hell. This, of course, is licensed to kill. They're not a human. They are bloodthirsty. And why one should wait until God punishes them and put them in hell if we cannot take the task ourselves? That's the task of the devils. And we incinerate them ourselves. And there's here another picture, how they burn the Jews in the streets of Spain. But Michelangelo turned everything upside down. He had to paint the ancestors of Jesus. And the Christian believe, or that is what they claim, that Jesus was descendant of King David. And he had then to paint the house of David. All of them Jews, all of them kings of Judah. And the artist didn't paint them as they want them to paint, which is West European, but he wanted to portray them as real Jews. So he went to the camps of the Jews, of the refugees from Spain, and painted them, and they are, but painted them with compassion, imbued them with refinement and culture. And they show intellect and spiritual nobility. I would show you some examples. So, the depiction of a Jew. This is not satanic Jew, a thoughtful Jew. This one resembles Moses, in fact. This is Ishai, is the father of King David. This is Uzziah. He painted all the kings that ruled Judah in the time of Uzziah, because the Christians are obsessed with Uzziah. And the kings in the time of Uzziah was Uzziah, Yatom, Achaz, Veichizkiyahu, kings of Judah. So he painted all those kings one by one. Well, they look handsome, they look strong, they look beautiful, intellectuals, and so forth. And what else? he dressed them with special clothing, iridescent clothing, iridescent garments which they change color and tone when they move. And researchers proved that those garments are used only by the royal family in special occasions. So he took those refugees and dressed them in royal clothing. And he depicted the women as well. And again, they show intellect, strength, grace, and beauty. And that's, of course, forbidden to portray Jewish ladies in the church. And they are, of course, good mothers looking after the family. Yiddish mama, as we say. All of them, you can see them with children looking after the family. Oh, she's worried about him, probably he's naughty. Full of love, kindness. Oh, this lady is preparing a dress for her child. Oh, they look after themselves, of course. And they're absolutely beautiful. But the most touching figure of them all was Aminadab. Aminadab used to be a pious father, a pious man. The Talmud said about him that he was a very pious father. Of course, if he's a pious father, he must be one of the ancestors of Jesus. So Michelangelo painted him. But he painted him up above the seat of the Pope. But he painted him sad. Why? We shall see why. That's Aminadab. He's sad. Why? Because the church and the Inquisition imposed on him to wear the yellow badge. Can you see the yellow badge? The pious father of Jesus wearing a yellow badge. The badge of shame that the Inquisition and the Vatican imposed and the Jewish of Europe. And because of that, he is making a gesture, hand gesture, controlled hand gesture, delicate one. But the experts said that this gesture is devil's horn and is directed towards the seat, the gilded seat of the Pope. That's how Michelangelo registered his protest against the brutal treatment of the Jews by the church. As if to say, through Aminadab, through this pious father, you devil, this is how you treat the family of your Lord Jesus, with constant, relentless hatred and persecution. Is a protest very, very dangerous indeed. It would have landed him in the gallows. What saved the artist was the height, because it was so high, 21 meters high, they couldn't really see it properly. And afterwards, the soot of the candles masked the badge more, so they couldn't see it until 35 years ago, where the Pope, the Polish Pope, John Paul II, ordered to clean the ceiling, and then they saw Aminadab, the church saw Aminadab, and they were really startled. But they couldn't change anything. They couldn't change it. Couldn't touch Michelangelo. Michelangelo became an icon. Millions of people go every year to see his work. Nobody will change it. So his protest will remain up there, roaring up there. Devils, what you have done to these people. You're going to roar there for many hundred years to come. And in fact, that's the only protest I found in history of the Middle Ages, that anybody protested against the treatment of the Jews by the church. If you know anyone, please tell me. All the atrocities went and nobody said a word until Michelangelo. He cannot say it loudly with words. So he said it in colors and concealed it in his fresco. And for this, I think, he should be very much appreciated by the Jewish people everywhere. This is why, in fact, I go and talk about him, because I thought every Jewish person should know about that. But that was not enough for Michelangelo. It was not enough. In the four corners of the chapel, the corners that support the ceiling, he painted the four salvations of Israel. No, not the four salvations, Christian salvations, no. There is no Christian image there. So how do we know there are salvations of Israel? Because they were painted according to the Bible, according to the Midrash, according to the Talmud, and according to the Kabbalah, as we shall see. According to the Bible, it goes according to the book of Deuteronomy, where Moses told the children of Israel that they're going to be redeemed by biyad chazakah, with strong hand, zroa netuya, outstretched arm, morah gadol, big fear, big terror. Otot u'moftim, signs and wonders. Then, that's the Bible. Then the Midrash said, the first one, the salvation of the Jewish people by strong hand, mighty hand, it's delivered by Judith against Holofernes. And the second one, outstretched arm, was delivered by David against Goliath. And terror, great fear, was delivered by Esther against Haman. And sign and wonders by the copper snake of Moses. And Michelangelo painted exactly this, according to the Bible and according to the Midrash, and we see them one by one now. Now, the Judith against Holofernes. The artist showing Judith and her handmaiden concealing the head of Holofernes in the basket. So what was exactly the story? It was in the time of the wars of the Maccabees. A general, Syrian Greek general, approached the town of Bethulia in order to annihilate it. And from there, to go to Jerusalem to devastate Jerusalem as well. Yehudit, Judith, was a widow, a young, lovely widow. She was weak in body, but strong in character. She decided to help and save her city, Bethulia. So he went to the Greek camp, and she told them that she has a secret information to help them to conquer Bethulia very easy. And they were happy. They took her to the general, Holofernes, and he found a lovely lady with information, so he'd been eating and drinking excessively until he passed away. Then she prayed to God fervently, pleading, please God, give me a mighty hand, a strong hand, so I can carry my mission. And suddenly she plucked courage, and she went to the general, and she seized his battle sword, decapitated him, concealed the head with her handmaiden in a basket, took it to Bethulia, hung it on the front wall of Bethulia. Next morning, when the Greek came and saw their general impaled on the wall, they were petrified, lost any courage, and they left the battlefield. Then the Maccabees chased them and vanquished them. So that's the first salvation of Israel. The second one is David against Goliath. This story is well known to everybody. Goliath is a giant Philistine warrior. And he stood in the valley of Elah, and he cursed the army of Israel. He cursed the God of Israel. And nobody could challenge him because he was so giant, so frightening. And then came a young shepherd's boy, and with a slingshot and one pebble, and managed to hit him in the forehead, to take him down, and then to seize his battle sword and to behead him. The Philistines, when they saw that their hero, their giant, was killed this way, they left the battlefield. And the army of Israel chased them and vanquished them at that time. So this is the second salvation by David against Goliath. The third one is well known as well. It's Esther against Haman. What is this? It was in the time of the Persian Empire. Persian Empire is a huge empire. It was due to be a huge empire. Mehodu ve'ad Kush, from India to Ethiopia. Sheva ve'isrim ve'me'a medina, 127 provinces. All the Jews of that time were in this empire. And a minister, a powerful minister, plotted to annihilate them. Just simple as that. All the Jews of the empire. Esther plucked courage and went and told the king, Ki nimkarnu ani ve'ami lashmid laharog will-abed. We were sold, me and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to be annihilated. And the king was angry and said, Mi huze ve'ezahu asher mla'oli bo la'asot kach. Who is he? Where is he? That presumed in his heart to do such a thing. And now the Talmud claims that at that moment, an angel came and directed the finger of Esther towards Haman. Haman harra'azeh, this wicked Haman. And then, of course, a tremendous fear, tremendous terror descended on the schemer, Haman, as you can see here in the painting. And the last one, last salvation, is the plague of serpents. In the book of Numbers, it is said that the camp of Israel in the desert was infested by poisonous snakes. In order to save them, Moses put a copper snake atop a wooden pole. And he asked the Israelite, lift your eyes up to the sky and look at the snake and you will be safe. And the people who did that were saved. And here we see the fresco. That's the pole, that's the snake, and those people that are looking up to the snake, they are saved, and those who refused, they perished. The Midrash said that this wooden pole was the rod of Moses by which he played the signs in front of Pharaoh, because it said in the Bible, קח את המטה הזה בידיך, take this rod in your hand, אשר בו תעשה את האותות, with which you're going to play the signs. So that's the rod of Moses. Moses is not there. Why? Because Moses is very humble. God said that Moses was the most humble man on earth. And second, salvation comes from God, not from a man. Moses is not there. But the rod is there. And we are here in front of two choices, life and death. The artist wants us to live according to the advice of God, according to the Torah. God said to the Israelites, החיים והמוות נתתי לפניך. I set before you life and death. ברכה וקללה, blessing and curse. ובחרת בחיים, then choose life. And the artist is putting us in front of the pole of Moses and say, if you want to live, turn your eyes up to the sky, eyes and thoughts up to the sky, up to the divine, and you will survive. So this is a message basically to all humanity. Now, those four salvations of Israel, to pen them in the Vatican, in the heart of the Vatican, most sacred place of the Vatican that chased the Jews and killed them and exiled them, torture them. That's a gesture, tremendous gesture toward the Jewish people. As if the artists say, well, look, I know you are crushed, I know you are devastated, I know you are humiliated, but don't be depressed. Don't lose hope, because you are going to be redeemed by Yad Chazaka, Zroa Netuya, Mora Gadol, Otot Umoftim, as I painted to you here in the four corners. And we've seen up to now that those paintings were painted according to the Torah, according to the Midrash, and to the Talmud, but it's painted according to the Kabbalah as well. How anybody could paint according to the Kabbalah, we shall see now. But first of all, I have to say a few words about the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah teaches that there are 10 manifestations of God, 10 emanations of God, 10 communications of God. And they call them the 10 Sfirot. And the Sfirot is like the stages that they were needed to complete the creation of the world. And the Kabbalah teaches us that those Sfirot are connected to the human body, corresponding to the human body, because in the human body there are the elements of the divine. And the combination of the Sfirot with the human body, they form a kind of shape which the Kabbalah calls the tree of life. The Kabbalistic tree of life will look like this. We see up, Keter, crown, Chokhmah, wisdom, Bina, understanding. On the shoulder, there is Hesed, which is loving kindness, mercy. Other shoulder, Gvura, which is courage. And then we have, of course, more Sfirot on the branches of the tree, on the hand, the right and the left hand. And in the middle, we have Tiferet, Netzach, Vehod. More, that's the trunk of the tree. We have more Sfirot as well. But please remember that on the shoulder, the sphera of loving kindness, and the other one, gvura, courage. Now, back to our frescoes. The subject of Judith against Holofernes was a very, very popular subject. Many artists during the Renaissance, they were very impressed with Judith, this courageous lady, that she managed to trick the general and to save her town and Jerusalem as well. So here, for example, Botticelli is painting as a nice, lovely painting as a nice, lovely lady holding proudly the battle sword of Holofernes, while the handmaiden is carrying his head to Bethulia. Now, this one is by Donatello. Is a sculptor showing Judith beheading Holofernes. Michelangelo was really, he knew those works. He knew the works of Botticelli. He knew the work of Donatello. This work, in fact, was all the time in the house of the Medici. And Michelangelo was there, adopted in the Medici family. So he knew the work. But it's not interesting in this kind of glory. He wanted to show the emanation of God, the manifestation of God. So how he does it? Here, for example, we see he in fact, is not showing the faces of Judith or anything, but he put them in such a form to create the Hebrew letter Het for Hesed, loving kindness, as you can see here. While David and Goliath, they form the letter Gimel. And by this, they want to say that the salvation of Judith was done through this sphera of Hesed, loving kindness. The loving kindness of God gave this lady a mighty hand to perform her mission. And this is why it's showing the head, the manifestation of God. While in the case of David against Goliath, is the courage that it went through the sphera, courage, is through the courage that God gave David. He could have beheaded Goliath with his outstretched arm. And this is why he put them in a shape which resembles the Gimel. So this is according to the Kabbalah. Nobody before Michelangelo did anything like this. But he didn't stop here. If you remember, loving kindness, Hesed, and courage, Gvura, are the shoulders, the sphirot on the shoulder of the tree of life. Now, if we see the whole plan of the ceiling, the whole plan ceiling, you see, he painted Hesed on this corner. He painted Gvura, David and Goliath, in this corner. These are the shoulder of the Kabbalistic tree of life. And he painted them facing Jerusalem. So basically he was thinking about the Kabbalistic tree of life. Now, along the sides, he painted the prophets, here and here. So basically those are the hands of the Kabbalistic tree of life. And in the middle, that's the trunk, that's the trunk of the tree of life. And it's the Kabbalah called the trunk Shvil HaTzaddikim, the path of the righteous. And what did he paint in the path of the righteous? The Torah is the path of the righteous. He painted two portions of Torah, Bereshit and Noah. Now here, apparently, Michelangelo designed the whole ceiling to be the Kabbalistic tree of life. And every panel in that Kabbalistic tree of life was painted according to the Torah, to the Midrash, to the Talmud, and to the Kabbalah. In fact, he painted the biggest fresco, the biggest Jewish tapestry ever painted in history. And he did that in the heart of the Vatican, which was a daring, unsurpassed daring, and very dangerous thing to do. And what saved him? The ignorance saved him. The ignorance sometimes is a blessing. If they just knew that, of course, they will destroy the paintings, and they will ban Michelangelo in the street of Rome like the Jews in the street of Spain. Now, we go further and see what he did. Well, to show you the whole Sistine Chapel, that's the ceiling. And we go now and see what he did in the Shvil HaTzaddikim, in the path of the righteous. The creation. And first panel of the creation is God, first day, separating the light from the darkness. Is that Jewish? Is that painting, is that fresco Jewish? I would say yes. Why? Because God created by separation. So he separated the light from the darkness, and he created the day and night. He separated the dry ground from the water, and he created the continent and the oceans. And we are supposed to do, it is Jewish because we are supposed to do exactly the same, separation and differentiation as God did. We were supposed to differentiate between good and bad, between holy and profane, between clean, non-clean, kosher, non-kosher, Shabbat, and the rest of the days of the week. In fact, we pray the Havdalah, the differentiation, every Saturday evening. We bless God that He differentiate in between light and darkness, in between holy and unholy, and so forth. So it is Jewish. And to differentiate in between good and bad and so forth is not easy, the artist telling us, because he's showing God exercising force. He painted him in a twisted pose, in a serpentine manner, just like Michelangelo when he painted the ceiling. And there is more than that. It was painted according to Rashi. How to paint according to Rashi. Rashi is asked the question, why in the second day of the creation we say, Vehi Erev Vehi Boker Yom Sheni, and there was evening and there was morning, second day. And then, Vehi Erev Vehi Boker Yom Shlishi, and there was evening and the morning, third day, and fourth day, and so forth. But when it comes to the first day, it said, Vehi Erev Vehi Boker Yom Echad. And there was evening and morning, one day. And Rashi said it's just because of the oneness of God. It sounds like the Shema. Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. وهي عربي بكر يوم إخاد. So God, that was the day one was the day of the one. There was nothing in the whole universe apart from God. There is no any heavenly being or anything like that. One alone in the universe. And this is how he depicted. Now, the artist did even more than that. There's something really, really special in his fresco. And I have to say a few words about the fresco painting. Fresco, it means fresh. What is fresh? The plaster must be fresh. They cannot paint on a dry plaster. So they need to prepare one day all the shades of colors, all what is needed for the plaster, and the artist must finalize the drawing, and they come the next day. They place the plaster on the wall, and the artist will trace the drawings on the wet plaster by nail, point by point. And when he finishes, he takes out the drawing and apply the colors, and must finish quickly before drying. So fresco painting needs a very detailed preparation, slow and detailed preparation, and fast execution. But in this case, of the day one of the creation, Michelangelo refused to get any help. He closed himself alone. He prepared the plaster, and he painted directly on the plaster without any drawing, and finished it in one day. All this for the homage of God. God was one alone in day one, and Michelangelo was one alone in one day. And that's a homage to the pure monotheism of the Jewish people. Now, we go further and see the creation of Adam, the creation of man. I think this picture, this painting, this fresco is well known over all the world. Because people are interested in the creation of man. It's something very exciting. But there was a lot of questions to ask about this picture. For example, what is the cape that enclosing all the picture, God and the angels? What is this garment that is hanging there like a tail with the woman in the center? Why there are so many cherubs entangled around God? Why God is touching Adam in his left arm? That was a complete mystery until in 1975, a Jewish surgeon from Indiana came to the Sistine Chapel in order to see the work of Michelangelo. Was amazed. And then when he came to the creation of man, he was struck with familiarity. Oh, I know this, he said. I know this. I know this shape. I teach it. It is a cross-section in the brain of man. And it is the right hemisphere, not the left, the right hemisphere of the brain. So it was a mystery again. Why should Michelangelo include in his fresco the brain of a man? It's just to hint that this is done according to the Kabbalah. That God created man through the Sphira, wisdom, Chokhmah, wisdom. And the lady there is the symbol of wisdom. So why the cherubs are entangled this way? This again to hint about another teaching of the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah teaches that God has got a Chokhmah Stima. Chokhmah Stima, it means a hidden brain. concealed brain, hidden brain. It is the rationale of the Lord that we never understand ourselves. This, for us, is anathema. And it calls Chokhmah Nesteret a hidden wisdom as well. And according to Kabbalah, the Chokhmah Nesteret, the hidden, the hidden wisdom, is the means by which God ignites in us, in the human being, the will to create, to design, to build, to write, to program, to paint, or to sculpt like Michelangelo. It is the source of our motivation to emulate the Lord and to fill the world with purpose and with meaning. This inspiration, according to the Kabbalah, transformed to us through two sets of emotions, a higher set and a lower set. The higher set is everything to do with the spiritual and with the sublime. The lower set is everything to do with the physical and the material things. Now, the sublime and the spiritual is called Yisrael Saba, Yisrael the elder. And God represents Yisrael Saba, the spiritual and the sublime, while the cherub around him represent Yisrael Zuta, represent the lower emotion. It was called Yisrael Zuta, Yisrael the infant. And it has everything to do, as we said, in the physical and the material things. Now, God is touching the left hand of man. Why? Because God wants to bless him. Because our sages taught us that we get our blessing and our benedictions through the left hand. Why? Because the blood vessels in the left hand lead directly to the heart. And this is why we wear the tefillin in our left hand. So the whole thing is basically the brotherhood of man by the Kabbalah, the Kabbalistic brotherhood of man. We're all the children of God. We're all the result of his wisdom, the product of his wisdom. He not only gave us life, but he blessed us with talents and ability to fill the world with the spiritual and the sublime. That's the meaning of all this. Is everything is according to Kabbalah. In fact, what Frank Merschberger, the doctor from Indiana, an American doctor, he recognized that it is the right hemisphere. Why the right hemisphere? Because again, the Kabbalah said that wisdom is connected only with the right side of the brain and not with the left. So Michelangelo, according to the Kabbalah, he painted the right hemisphere of the brain. In fact, Frank Merschberger, Dr. Frank Merschberger, he could identify all the parts of the brain: cerebrum, cerebellum, optical lobe, cortex, brainstem, and everything was clear for him. And he was just amazed and published the work. But now, after the research that has been done, we know why, because it's painted according to Kabbalah, and all the work is a kind of Kabbalistic work. Now, we go to the other panel. The forbidden fruit and the tree of knowledge. May I ask, what was the forbidden fruit? hundreds of years, maybe thousands. We were taught the forbidden fruit is an apple. No. Michelangelo painted that according to the Talmud. And Talmud said differently. Talmud said that God doesn't place us in a difficulty unless he creates this solution for that difficulty and the difficulty itself. We have a problem, we have the solution in the problem itself. So this solution of Adam and Eve, when they find themselves naked in paradise, the solution was fig leaf. Therefore, the problem was the fig tree, the fig fruit. And the tree of knowledge was a fig tree. And this is the only fresco in Western art that shows the fruit of knowledge was a fig fruit, and the tree of knowledge, good and bad, was a fig tree. And again, what about Eve? Eve, was she really the bad temptress, the horrible temptress that caused us to be thrown, expelled from paradise? Well, this is what they told us. They blame the wife all the time. But the Midrash doesn't agree with that. The Midrash is completely feminist. He said she was misled by her husband. Why? Because God told Adam, don't eat, very clearly, don't eat from the fruit of knowledge in the middle of the garden. But he told his wife, don't eat from the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden. He didn't mention tree of knowledge. So he really didn't convey the orders of God faithfully. This is why it makes it easy for the serpent to tempt Eve. So really, Adam is equally guilty. And more than that, the Midrash said that she was more genuine than Adam, that Eve was more genuine than Adam. Why? Because when God asked her, Mazot asit, what did you do? And she said, Hanachash shishi'ani va'ochel, the serpent tempted me and I ate. But when he asked Adam, why did you didn't? He said, Ha'isha asher natata imadi, the wife you presented with, natnali min ha'etz va'ochel. She gave me meat from the tree and I ate. Well, Mr. Adam, that's not exactly the case, because you get a very clear instruction not to eat from the fruit of knowledge, so you should have refused, so that you are more guilty than Eve herself. And in fact, the artist, showing him picking the figs himself, while Eve is taking the fig from the serpent. Then what about the serpent? Was it really, we are taught for 2,000 years that the serpent is a big snake as we know it now. And I was amazed when I was young why Michelangelo painted the snake with face and hands and legs. Apparently he did it according to the Midrash. The Midrash said, yes, the serpent originally had face, hands, and legs. But when God punished him and said, Al gechonchatelech, you'll creep on your belly, then he lost his features. He lost his looking, he lost his hand and his legs, and started crawling on the belly according to the punishment of God. And Michelangelo was again painting according to the Talmud and according to the Midrash. Now, the other part of the of the fresco, the expulsion from paradise. It is just like a mirror image. The angel is like the mirror image of the snake. And in the middle is the tree of knowledge. The artist again continue to paint according to the Jewish teaching. And the Jewish teaching says, and this time he wants to tell us something about good tendencies, bad tendencies, and our capacity for free choice and free will. Well, the teaching of the Midrash of our sages say that in us, which is true, there are two tendencies, two opposing tendencies, a good tendency and a bad tendency. And there is a tug of war in between them. And every tendency was to draw us to its side. And we have the free will and the free choice to do. So this is why he put the angel as a mirror of the snake, because the angel represents the good tendencies, the snake the bad tendencies, and we are in front of the tree of knowledge. This is the exact place where humanity, when man learned first time to distinguish in between good and bad. And the artist basically telling us, well, look, if you choose to go according to the good tendencies, then you're going to dwell in paradise. If you abandon it and go with the bad tendencies, then you're going to lose eternal youth, eternal life, and eternal pleasure in paradise. So you have the free choice and the free will. You have to choose the right thing. And he's hinting really basically what to choose. As if he's telling us, well, look, choose the angel because he's facing you. Don't choose the serpent because it's turning its back to you. And the more is the better. That's a better thing that he's turning his back. So, again, he painted everything according to the Midrash and according to the Talmud. Now, we go to the prophets. The artist painted 7 prophets. Why 7? Because the number 7 is symbolic in Judaism. The 7th day of the creation, the 7th night of the menorah that there used to be, the holy menorah that used to be in the temple in Jerusalem, which Zechariah said the 7 lights are the eyes of God that look in every direction, towards every direction. And the prophets, the 7 prophets, are considered to be the eyes of the Lord as well. This is why the artist, he didn't put them on one side, but he scattered them around the ceiling of the church so that they could witness really in every direction what's happening in the church and outside. And the Midrash said that the 7 prophets, they are symbolizing the 7 clouds of glory that protected the children of Israel in the desert. And the Kabbalah said that the 7 prophets are symbolizing the lower 7 sphirot of the Kabbalistic tree of life. So 7 is very symbolic in Judaism. And even the number was chosen by the artist to be according to Judaism, even the number. But I'm not going to talk about 7 prophets. I'm choosing only 2. Why 2? Because the messages in those 2 are really very important. And the first one is Jeremiah. He painted Jeremiah just above the seat of the Pope. And Jeremiah looking down on the seat of the Pope. And he is very, very upset. He's mournful, sad. And they say he's sad because of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. But it is only because of the destruction of the temple? No, because he is wearing the colors of Rome. The color of Rome was gold and red. So he's mourning about the spiritual destruction of Rome and of the Sistine Chapel. And a proof for that is, if we look, we see hidden down there a scroll of parchment, and it's just open a bit, and there is written Aleph in Latin and Ein in Hebrew. Aleph, Ein. What is this Aleph, Ein? There's two explanations. Those letters are otiyot, groniyot. Again, we have to speak them through the throat, and they are very similar. And not everybody could really pronounce them properly. But the high priest must pronounce them properly, because if not, then he's going to distort the meaning of the word of God. That's one. The other thing, Aleph is number one, numerically is number one in Hebrew. One is God. So Aleph is monotheism. But Ein is numerically is 70. So what is to do the Aleph with the Ein? Now, according to the Talmud and the Midrash together, both of them claim that the descendant of the children of Noah. Noah had 3 children, Shem, Ham, and Yafet, and then they have 71 descendants. And the Midrash and the Talmud teach us that 70 of those descendants established the pagan nations, and only one established the monotheistic nation, which is the Jewish nation. So Aleph is one, and of course Aleph is the first letter of the Ten Commandments. Anochi Adonai Elohecha asher hotzitcha miMitzrayim. It's Aleph as well. Again, monotheism. While Ein is pagan and paganism. And the artist reading Aleph Ein as a warning for the Pope. You have to adhere to pure monotheism, not to the practices of the pagan. Why is telling him that? Because they behaved like the Roman emperors. Every one of them behaved like Caligula and not like John the Baptist. And what Michelangelo found is a corruption like in Roman time. It was bigotry, it was thirst for power, it was lust, it was nepotism, anything wrong. And for him, that's the way of the pagans. And he warning the Pope, if you are not going to adhere to the unadulterated monotheism, and it's going to succumb to the unbridled corruption of the pagans, then you are not fit to be the high priest of the church. And this warning is a very courageous warning. Again, very, very, very dangerous. But it's hidden. Nobody could see it properly. And ignorance as well. They couldn't understand it. And this is how he saved, basically. And continued to work uninhibited. The last one that I'm going to talk about is Jonah. Jonah is symbolic. Jonah, we read Jonah in Yom Kippur. Why? Because Jonah is atonement. What's the story of Jonah? God asked him to go and to preach to Nineveh. Nineveh was a wicked, corrupted town. Go to preach in order to save Nineveh. Oh, Jonah is not interested to save the wicked. No, he won't do that. And why our God should save them? Well, their gods, their idols should save them. So he ran away from God. He took a big ship, Oniyat Tarshish, as merchant ship, and ran away in the ship. But the sea, there was very, very great storm in the sea. The ship almost sunk. In order to save the ship, Jonah was thrown to the sea, and there he was picked by a big fish, daga. ויתפלל יונה אל אדוני אלוהיו ממעי הדגה. And Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish. And the prayer was so nice that God forgave him and led him to the shore. He went to Nineveh and he warned them. And they heeded. He told them, Od 40 yom v'Nineveh nehefechet. In 40 days, and Nineveh is going to collapse. So the king was worried, everyone was worried, and they changed their ways, atoned, and God forgave them. So Michelangelo find himself parallel, his mission parallel to that of Jonah. How? Because Jonah ran away from God. He ran away from the Pope. He left Rome and he went to Florence. Jonah refused his mission. Michelangelo as well refused his mission. He said, I'm not a painter, I'm a sculptor. And the message of Jonah is repentance, atonement, and the mission of Michelangelo is the same. But he could not say it loudly because his life would be in danger. So he hid it again, once more, in his fresco. How? He painted Jonah above the altar. The meaning of Jonah in Hebrew is dove. Instead of the dove of the church, which means Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. So put Jonah, the prophet, instead of the Holy Spirit of the church. And then the hands of Jonah, the left hand over is muddled, the hands, the left over the right. Why? Because God told Jonah that there is 120,000 people in Nineveh that they don't know the right from the left hand. It means they don't know right from wrong. So he painted the hands this way. But the fingers that making the letter bet, I'll show you later, the letter bet. And then there is an angel who is showing 5. The fingers here forming the letter bet. And you see the angel showing 5. Well, of course, you see the hands at the left over the right. So basically, the artist saying, Jonah is as looking up there. Where is Ruach HaKodesh? Where is the Holy Spirit? The Holy Spirit has left the church. I am Jonah instead, but I am different dove. I am Jonah ben Amittai. I am Jonah, the son of the truthful. I am the dove of the truth. I am the messenger of the truth. And what is the truth? That you are like my hand, mixed up. You are so distorted in mind that you cannot distinguish between right and left. And what do you think? That your church is the bet? The Kabbalah says that the bet is a special letter. The bet deserves to be the first letter of the book authorized by God, the Bible. Because the Bible starts with Bereshit. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'aretz. Start with bet. Why the bet is so important? Because bet in Hebrew is a house of God, Beit HaMikdash. This is why the finger is doing bet. And he's telling them, you are distorted in mind, you don't know right from left, and you think that your church is Beit HaMikdash. No, your church is the source of corruption. And you need to atone, that's the last minute to atone. Otherwise, like Nineveh, in 40 days, Nineveh will collapse. and how to atone according to the angel, showing you the five. The five is the Pentateuch. The five is the five books of Moses, is the Torah, the Chumash. Go according to the Chumash, you will be saved. Otherwise, the consequences is very, very, very grave. And in fact, the prophecy of Michelangelo came true. How? He finished the painting in 1512. 5 years after that, in 1517, Martin Luther, he nailed his protest against the papacy on the door of the church. 5 years after that, it means in 1522, the Catholic Church split into two. Used to rule all Europe, split into two, Catholic and Protestant. And a new religion, Lutheranism, swept Europe. And this religion hated the Pope and hated the Vatican. 5 years after that, in 1527, an army of Lutheran attacked Rome, conquered Rome, mercilessly sacked Rome, mercilessly killed many, many people, more than 20,000 people. Treated the Vatican in a special way, desecrated the Vatican, pillaged the Vatican, robbed all the treasures that the Vatican collected in hundreds of years, and left the Vatican in ruins. Only the ceiling of Michelangelo Buonarroti remained unscratched in order to tell us the tale. And in conclusion, what aroused inside the Sistine Chapel is a marvel comparable in its magnitude only to a biblical miracle. A persecuted people, brown-beaten refugees who had escaped the wrath and the flames of the Inquisition and the sword of Ferdinand and Isabella, were clad in royal garments and presented within the walls of the most revered shrine of their oppressors, much like Mordecai being paraded in majestic robes through Shushan. A pope who had intended to signpost the demise of Judaism by adorning his chapel with his prophet and saint, instead had his sanctuary embellished with Jews and Judaism. This demonstrates fulfillment of a biblical proverb, Rabbot machshavot belev ish, achatzat Adonai hi takum. There are many, many plans in the man's heart, but the counsel of the Lord shall prevail. In the Sistine Chapel, it seems there was indeed secessionism. But it was, in fact, the Jews who succeeded the Christian saints inside the largest fresco in all Christendom. Thus realizing what was said in the Bible. Koreh shachat bayipol v'golel even elav tashuv. He who digs a pit for others shall fall into it, and he who rolls a stone will return upon him. Judaism has triumphed in the church and in Florence after having been banned and incinerated on the street of Spain. It was a victory of the weak against the mighty and a triumph of the spirit against power. As it said in the book of Zechariah, not by might, not by power, but by my spirit, said the Lord. The secrets of the arts of the Sistine Chapel have lain undiscovered for 500 years, but have now been exposed to dazzle the world. Over 6 million people visit the chapel every year to be stunned by its frescoes. in wanting to know more about the paintings, they will need to understand something about Judaism. Similarly, artists and art students over all the world will need to gain some background about Judaism if they wish to better appreciate the esteemed Michelangelo's work. In this way, the promotion of Judaism may perpetuate across the planet indefinitely. The Torah says the eternity of Israel will never lie. The ceiling of the Sistine Chapel bears testimony to this absolute truth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have time for just a few questions.
That was a very fascinating talk, thank you. Does the Catholic Church recognise what you've been saying?
Sorry?
Does the Catholic Church agree with the findings that you've been telling us about this evening?
I don't think I heard it properly.
Does the Catholic Church
Yes.
agree with what you've been saying?
Oh, no, of course not. They invited Della and they start explaining. Della is the expert on the Renaissance painting. And of course, they rejected. In fact, they removed, for example, the parchment of Jeremiah from the picture they're selling. And one expert from Florence, he is agreeing with him, but of course the church not. No way. In fact, they're getting in trouble from the church or from the Christian because of their research.
Good evening. Very interesting, very fascinating. One thing I wanted to know, as a devout Christian, not myself, of course, Michelangelo, how did he glean so much information about Judaism, especially the technicalities of knowing how to put letters in and such scientific detail in that respect?
Yes, that's a great question. Really need a lot of time. If there's time, I can tell you. Can I show them more?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. In Rome, there was a bad reaction, great hatred toward the Jews. Ferdinand and Isabella, king and queen of Spain, they asked permission. They asked for the Inquisition to come and to judge the Jews in Spain and so forth. And Giovanni Raffanelli was the head of the Inquisition, and he was a friend of the Pope as well. Very bad, really, for the Jews and for free thinking. But miracles happened. But in Florence, at the same time, there was completely different winds, different kind of thinking. Free thinking, adoration of the Jews and Judaism. Why? Because they were free thinkers. And we say Renaissance. What is Renaissance? It's a great advance in culture. But it is according to classical models. And the classical models are the Greek and the Roman. The Greek and Roman worked in art and painting and sculpture and so forth. But spirituality, no. There was no spiritual movement that I know in history. It was not based on Judaism. So they wanted, again, those people, for example, I show you the people that really initiated the Renaissance. That Sixtus IV, he came with this successionism. He said that Jews are completely, Judaism completely removed and succeeded by Christianity. And those, the nepote, those the nephews, this one became Julius II. one of the nephews. Cosimo De'medici, the one who started really the Renaissance. He came from humble family, became money lender, and then he turned to be one of the richest person in the world, basically. But he loved culture. So he saved a lot of manuscripts when the Byzantine Empire collapsed. And he employed scholars to translate them. And among those scholars was Marsilio Ficino, which is himself became a professor. He became a teacher. He basically established the Athens School, which is a Platonic university in Florence. And him and the Medicis invited the greatest scholars of the world to come and to teach in France. This is how the Renaissance started. So, but Ficino, and that's Lorenzo de' Medici. This is the fellow who, gave money to all the scholars to come and to teach in Florence. He discovered Michelangelo, and he, not formally, informally, adopted him, and he lived in his house in order to be educated by those geniuses of the Renaissance. Among them, Poliziano, this one, he was a poet, he was expert on Latin and ancient Greek. And that one is a special scholar. This fellow, if there is any definition for genius, he was a genius. Pico della Mirandola. Pico finished few universities when he was in his teens. And then, of course, he came with the Medici in Florence to teach. And he wanted to reconcile the philosophy of the Greek to his religion. And then he found, he wanted to reconcile Plato with his religion. He found that he found that Ibn Birol did it before him. He tried to reconcile Aristotle with his religion, found that Maimonides did it. Cannot escape the Jews. And then he wanted to learn Judaism, and he was struck by the wisdom and by the thinking of Judaism, and by the Kabbalah, the mysticism. And he collected the biggest Judaic library that could be found in any hand among non-Jews, and the biggest collection of Kabbalah material that could be found anywhere in the world. And he studied Hebrew and Latin in order to understand the Talmud. And he was the teacher of Michelangelo Buonarroti. And from him, he learned to love Jews and Judaism. And from him, he learned something else. Michelangelo is the angel Michael, the archangel Michael. According to Christianity, he was the angel responsible for the safety of women in birth. And this is why they call the artist Michelangelo, because his mother was ill and she died shortly after his birth. Called him Michelangelo. But he learned from Pico della Mirandola that according to Judaism, the angel Michael is the protector of the Jewish people against their deadly enemies. And he decided to be one. And all his life was trying to do this. So he learned Judaism, he learned the Hebrew, and giving the opportunity to defend the Jews, and he did it while it was very, very, very dangerous. He could have killed for many, many reasons. Because there's a lot of insult in his paintings. I didn't show you all. It'll take you another couple of hours. Insulting the Pope in a very bad way as well. And he get away with it because he knew to conceal it. And again, he's doing it according to the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah claims that under the surface of everything there is emanation of the Lord. The things is not what we see. There is more deep thing in underneath. So he did exactly the same. On the surface, you don't see much, but underneath the surface, the meaning is deep. And this is why they couldn't understand it. And this is why it survived. Lucky for us and for humanity. Did I answer you?
We have time for one short final question. No? Well, people often ask me where I found my speakers. I can tell you this time, I walked into the shul and Florette Haman was here. She got out her mobile and phoned Dr. Tahan and said, "You're going to be a speaker here." So I'm now going to call on Florette Haman to propose a vote of thanks.
Dr. Menashe Tahan, thank you. Thank you very much for your inspiring words. Thank you very much for coming here at a second, just with one simple request. You came. Thank you very, very much. We go back a very, very, very long way. Since you arrived in Birmingham as a student, and you somehow hit it off with my dad, and his love of Torah, and your love of arts, and you talked for a long time, and I remembered that, and I couldn't join in your conversations because I didn't know anything about what you were talking about. But tonight, thank you very, very much for inspiring us with the hidden secrets of Michelangelo and your passion for the subject. What I do remember when I was a young person is the way you used to come and discuss with Daddy the inventions that you were working on. Your knowledge is unbelievable, and I remember when you discovered the fact that you can make plastic from oranges, orange peel, and you told Daddy all about it, and I thought, this man, what is he talking about? But it's true, that's what they're doing now. They are making plastic from oranges, and that's just one of your inventions. I think I could ask you to speak about many subjects. One of the ones you enjoy most of all is poetry with Yehuda Levi. And the way you remember all the words, I don't know how you do it. But all I want to say for this evening is thank you so much for joining our group and speaking to us this evening about this inspiring subject. I'm going to give you a token of our appreciation for coming here this evening. But I've got one more thing to say.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Your dad taught me that to do things without getting any reward is the best thing. Is according to the Pirkei Avot. אל תהיו כעבדים המשמשים את הרב על מנת לקבל את פרס, אלא היו כעבדים המשמשים את הרב שלא על מנת לקבל פרס. ויהי מורא שמיים עליכם. This is, he taught me, and I'm really embarrassed because I do it just for the sake of the Jewish people. That's all. There's no other interest. But anyway, thank you very much indeed.
I just want to say one more thing, and that is thank you to a very, very special person here who every month inspires and brings us guests from, I don't know where he finds them, but Spencer is just amazing. And I think we ought to have an amazing clap of hands for Spencer. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much for coming this evening.